Okay, hello and welcome to today's session in the MSDynamicsWorld.com Spring 2014 Financial Automation Webcast Series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and we are joined today by Murray Fife of IBIS. Murray is a Microsoft MVP with years in the Dynamics space. He is a prolific author and blogger with many educational Dynamics AX titles to his credit. He's also written for us, and he's a returning speaker. We're really glad to have him back. I think that goes without saying for today's session on using AX workflows for financial automation. So as we get started, I just want to add that we do invite you to add your feedback and ask questions during the session. You can use the chat and the Q&A tabs that you'll see in the webcast session here. With that, I will hand it over to Murray to begin the presentation. So Murray, are you there? I'm sorry, Murray, I think I might have just muted you.
Yes, I am here.
Welcome.
Okay. Now, thanks everybody, and let me just share my desktop. Now, today we're going to work through a number of different scenarios that I've put together to really help you with financial automation and really to give you a little bit of an introduction to workflows. And a lot of times when I talk to people about workflows, then they think that they're a little bit daunting, or maybe that they're a developer task that's involved in trying to get them up and running. And that's really not the case. And there's a lot of areas, especially within finance, that you can take advantage of workflows to different degrees, and also take advantage of a number of different features which are built into the workflows, which is what I'm going to show today. Now, I don't think I'll be able to get through all of the examples that I've got here, but I'm going to try to show you how, for example, you can use simple journal approvals, and then how you can take that to the next step and use workflows and approvals with all of your general journals. Then also show another option, which is the invoice journal approval, which extends out and adds more sort of functionality. And then how, for example, we can approve payables invoices and also have them automatically posted. And if we get a chance, then I'll try to show how you can use the document management approvals and workflows built into Dynamics AX to help you with some of your document processing and invoice processing. Now, all of these are based around the general ledger or the journals and the payables department, but everything that I'm going to show today transfers over to the receivables side. It also transfers over to all of the other areas within Dynamics AX where you have workflows enabled. So after today, hopefully everyone will see that workflows and approvals for managing your financial processes really isn't that hard to implement, and can actually do a lot when it comes to organizing people and sort of assigning tasks along the way. So the first area that I wanted to talk about is just the simple journal approvals. And let me just go down here and I'll pull up my correct area here. And what I've got is I've just got Dynamics AX running. So let me close this down. And the most simple type of approval that you can perform is really built around the journals themselves. So if I go into, for example, the general ledger, and if I go down to my journal names, then every journal that you have in the system, you can implement approval and activation. So, for example, if you look down here and look at this area, let me get my mouse here, which is the approval step, then I can go out and I can activate an approval here for any of these journals. So if I go to my general journal, then if I just click this, then it's going to allow me to choose an approval group for who is allowed to process or approve this before it becomes postable. Now, I've gone out and created some groups here, but if I expand out and view the details on the approval groups, then we can go out and create a new group here. And this could be controller. And all you need to do to define who needs to approve this or who can approve this is to flick over to the users group, and then we can just add users here. So I can add the administrator, or I could add any of the users that I've got in the system. I'll just select one user and close this. So now what I can do is, against my general journal, I now have a controller group that's associated with this. And if I close this down and then just go to my general journals and then create a new journal here, which is a general journal, and then create some lines. Let me just grab that. And I'm going to post to consulting and $100, and I'll pay that out of petty cash. Now, notice with this journal, there is no post option available to me. So by turning on that flag, I now have to use the approval process that's built into the system. So I can now report this as ready to be approved. And now the journal is out there and has the approve or reject button. Now, this isn't very SOX compliant right now because I'm doing the submission and also the approval. But until someone goes out and gets notified that they have a journal for approval, and they approve it, I cannot click on this post button. So if I click approve, so now I've approved this, this is valid, and I can go out and I can post and transfer this, and now it becomes a valid journal. So this is one area that you can take advantage of when it comes to sort of managing all of your journals and adding a little bit of control into the system. Now, this is one area that you can take advantage of. There's also some other features that you can use here as well. Because if, for example, you have particular journals that you want to control, you can lock them down in this manner. But also what you can do is you can restrict access to journals in the system just through this simple technique. So let me show you something else that I have here. Now, also if I now return back to my journals, then there's another area down here on my general journal, which is a blocking option. So if I wanted to tell the system that I want to only allow some people to enter in these journals, then again, I could select the controller group. And now if I log in as someone who isn't the controller, then they're not going to be able to see the general journal. So if I'm saving this, I'm going to quickly pop up another user, and I'll pull up my CFO. And I can go over here now into my general ledger. And if I try to go out and create a posting, then notice that the general journal isn't popping up. So all of this is very, very simple workflow, but it's a very easy way that you can sort of restrict access and manage it. But a more important way, or a more dynamic way that you can go out and manage journal postings or really any transaction in the system is to go out and use workflow. So this is the area where, for example, most people think that workflows are hard, or maybe there's some sort of trick to them in order to get them up and running. And in this case, I'm just going to turn off my blocking, and I'm going to turn off the activation. And we're going to look at this flag in here, which we have against the journal, which is for workflow approval. So again, any workflow that we have, any journal that we have configured in the system, we can go out and create these journals. Now, one thing you need to pay attention to is the type of journal. So over the next couple of scenarios, I'm going to show how you can create a general journal and then also an AP invoice journal as well. And based on the journal type that we're running, then we're going to have to create different workflows that are associated to them. So let's just start here with the general journal, and I'll show you how you can go out and generate new workflows so that you can manage them in the system. Now, you don't need to be a developer. You don't need to have any specific coding skills in order to do this. All you need to do is go out here and look for the general ledger workflows here in the system. Now, if I click on that, then it's going to take me into the workflow design, the workflow task list. And what I want to do is I want to tell the system that I want to create a new workflow. And in this case, I'm going to create a daily journal workflow. So the general journal that I had before is just a daily journal. So we just select this option. The different journals that if you have allocations journals or eliminations journal or advanced ledger entries, then they have their own type of workflow. But for us, we just choose this. And that's going to take us down now into it's going to create a workflow for us or a canvas. And then I go out and I just define my workflow. So if I look down here further down, then there's an end option here. So all the workflows have a beginning and they have an end. But what we need to do is we need to put something into the center. Down here on the left-hand side, we have all of the things that we can do that are associated with the workflow as well. Now, these are going to change, and you'll see these change as I go out and create different types of workflows. But we've got decisions or ways that we can manage it, and then approval steps that we go out and assign to people. So what I want to do is I just want to drag the approval and put it down here on the canvas. And then you just go out, and as you hover over these elements, and you'll see little nodes popping up around the outside. I just want to go and drag from the start to the approval step, and then finish that off by clicking down there. So now I've got my flow that says when I go out and create my general journal, then it's going to have an approval step, and then it's going to complete. I can go out and change this a little bit. So let me close this down here. If I select different areas, so say for example I select just this area over here, which is the canvas, then these areas in the ribbon bar are going to change, showing me different options. If I click on the approval and then drill into that, then if I choose a step, then you'll see that I've got assignments and conditional things and escalations that I can take advantage of, which we'll look at later on. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to just select this area and I'm going to click on the basic settings. Now, I'm going to give this just a different name. And I can say who's the owner of this. And also, if, for example, I have the workflow approvals being sent out by email, then I'm going to choose a template. Then I'm going to say, what is this journal for? What is this workflow for? And I'm just going to say, please sub. And you'll see this pop up when I go out to my general journals themselves. This is the information that's going to say what type of journal is being created. And then I'm going to tell the system that what do I want to do and who needs to perform this approval. So this is a general journal approval step. And then for if I am receiving messages, which we'll see in a second, then I've got a subject. So this is journal requires approval. And then I'm going to add some instructions and just say, please approve this. Now we'll look later on, but add another sort of more advanced function that we have, but we can go out and also insert placeholders here, so we can have text coming from the record or from the workflow that gets popped in here. Now the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say, who is this assigned to? Now I'm going to assign this to a user or a particular user, because I just want this to be a simple approval process as we build up in this example. So I selected the user that I want to assign this to, and then I'm going to choose a user. So I'm just going to assign this to the administrator, but I could go out and assign it to any of the other users that I've got set in the system. So now that I've done that, I've created my workflow. One little tip here is that if you click on this error pane, then it's going to show up down here at the bottom, and if there are messages here, then there's going to be things that you need to update, and you can actually click on them and go straight to the forms or into the objects that you need to look at. But as you can see, I've got no errors that are popping up. So this workflow is good to go. So now I've finished that, I'm going to save this, and this is a journal approval. And I'm just going to click OK. Now, this is the first version of the workflow that I'm creating, so it's going to ask me, do I really want to activate this and start using it, or do I want to keep it sort of in a draft mode? And I'm going to activate it because I want to use it. Now, all of this is now running in the background, and here I've also got a situation where I have two workflows because I was setting this up before. But I want to run every time I create a journal. I want to maybe run this workflow. So if I wanted to, I could just set this as the default, and then it would become the standard journal that I could use. But the final part of the setup that I need to perform is to go back here to my journal names, and then go to my general journal, and I'm going to tell it that I now want to use an approval workflow, and I can choose the new workflow that I created from the list of workflows. So you could have a workflow here for the intercompany journal. You could have a workflow for allocations or adjustments or miscellaneous adjustments or write-offs, and they all go to different people for approval. So now that I've done that, let's go back, and I'm going to type in another journal. And I'll create the general journal. And something's happened that's a little bit different from the last time we did this. There's this yellow bar popping up the top, which says that there's a workflow that has been associated with this general journal, and in order to post this, I need to submit it for approval. So this is giving me a little bit more control. So if I go out, and I'm just going to do some more consulting again. For $1,000, again, pay that out of petty cash in my bank. And I still don't have that post option, so I'm going to close this. And now I need to go out and submit this. And I can say journal. And submit it. Now, in the background, this has gone out and this has started to run all the workflows that I have defined in the system. Now, if I look down here at my notifications, then a couple of things have happened. First of all, I've been notified through the pop-up toast down here that a journal has been submitted and I need to approve it. And if I click on that, it's going to open up the workflow task so that I can see what this is associated with and whether I need to perform it. Also, if I go over to here into my notifications list, then you'll see that along with all of my batch items, I have a journal here that I need to approve. So it's sort of bombarding me with a couple of different options on how I need to approve this. At any time, I can click on this Go to Origin, and it's going to take me over to the transaction that this started from, which in this case is the journals, and will take me straight to the general journal that this is associated with, so that I could go out and click on the actions and approve or deny or reject this based on what I want to do. And one other item that I can just show is that if I go to my home page, and if I go to my area page and see my work items, then also there's another item here which is showing me all of the tasks that have been assigned to me that I need to perform. So I've got some document that needs to be approved, and another journal that needs to be approved, and the general journal which we just typed in. Something that you may want to do is you can save this as a queue. So that it goes onto your home page. And now when I go out to my home page, then when this refreshes, then we're going to see a new queue that pops up here, which is showing me all of the items that I've been assigned, that I've been made responsible for. And then I can go out and just click on these, and as soon as I receive a workflow task, then I can just click on my workflow items, and it's going to take me through to the process. Now, if from here, I have my workflow task, which is my general journal. So I could open this journal up. I could see the batch information. I could go into the lines if I want to and review the information. I could look for any associated documentation that's associated with this. And then I just need to, if I like this, then I'm just going to approve it. It looks good. And now the system's going to run in the background and process my workflow. And after a couple of seconds, you'll notice that now I have my post option. So the workflow has gone out and it has stopped the posting of the transaction until it's been approved. And now if I post it, then everything's fine and the transaction's completed. So all of these transactions are really starting to be controlled through the workflow itself. Now, one other item that I can do here is that I can go up here to my actions at any time, and I could view the history of this transaction. And this allows me to go out and see for the workflow when it was activated, what time it was activated, who started it, what the approval task was, when the item was approved, and when also the workflow was completed. So if you have all of your workflow cubes defined, then you could run reports off these or any of these transactions that I'm going to show you, and you'll be able to see where the bottlenecks are within the organization and also see where people were performing these approvals. So this is one example. Oh, these were two examples, and these are just around the general ledger. But some other areas that are a little bit more interesting is when you go into the modules themselves. So I'm going to go over here to the accounts payable, and I'm going to create a different type of workflow. But in this case, it's going to be for an invoice. But I'm not going to do it through the general ledger. I'm going to do it here through the payables setup. So if I click on the payables workflows here within the system, then it takes me to the same form that I had before where I was creating the general ledger workflows. But these are just for the payables area. And if you look at the receivables area as well, then it's going to be similar. If I go out and say I want to create a new workflow, then it's giving me a lot more options here for all of the things that I can do with regards to the payables area. So I've got the ability to create invoice register journals, invoice journals, approval journals, vendor invoices that we'll see in just a second. But I just want to go out and create a journal here for just a simple invoice journal. So again, I'll create this workflow. It's going to go out and create a blank canvas for me. Here you can see all of the different sort of workflow errors that are popping up here as well. So that gives us an idea of what we need to do. Now, I mentioned before that if you see the errors that are popping up here, then you can use these to manage what you need to perform and what tasks need to be performed. So if I go out and I'll place an approval step here, I'll drag and drop this down, straight, put that down to there, find my end task, just pull it up a little bit, then link that through. And then rather than navigating the way that I did with the general journal, I can just go out and start assigning by clicking on these. So it's telling me that no one's assigned to this workflow task. So if I click on that, it's going to take me straight to that step. And I can go out and assign it to people. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to select the users, but I'm going to choose administrator and my CFO. And I'm going to click on this completion policy tag. And this says what number of people and what's the policy for this approval. I could say that I want all approvers to approve this. In this case, both people will be assigned the task, and both people have to approve it before it continues on. Or I'll just say that really it's first in, first served, and a single approver needs to approve it. Once it's approved, then it will pop off the other people's work item list because now it's moved through to the next stage. Other options that you can have is you could have voting. So based on, you could have the majority of the approvals are required in order to perform this, or you could specify a percentage. So you could say if you have 10 people responding or allowed to respond to this, and you could say I want 30% or I want 60% of the approvals to do this. But I'll just say I want one approver here within the system managing this. Now, I'm going to also update a couple more items here. So this is my invoice approval. But I'm also going to show you something else here that you can do is, and I mentioned these placeholders. If this is sent to you through an email or through a notification or a pop-up box, then you may want additional information in here. So I can click on this placeholder and it's going to pull out all of the information here from the journal. And it's got the bank account, it's got the currency code. So I could go out and say that this is for bank account, and then insert the placeholder. And then also I could have a link here. And if I go way down to the bottom, then it will have a link here to the workflow for approval via the web. So this is more like a mail merge here or a template. And then for each different approval as it pops through, then it's going to show me more information. So you can make this elaborate where you could have a complete description of this invoice here popping up in these work item instructions. I'm just going to close that. And now it's asking me for some submission information. And this is submit for invoice approval. I think if I close that, then all of the items here have been completed, so there's no errors. So I'm going to save this. I give it some notes and activate it if I want to. And now that I've done this, then I need to go, I need to associate this vendor journal workflow with, or the workflow with my vendor journal. So to do that, I'm just going to quickly go back here to my general ledger, to my journals, and then I've got my AP invoice here, I think. Yep. So for my AP invoice that I have, then now I can go out and I can select the workflow that I just generated and associate this with my invoice. So just like the general ledger journal, I could also have blocking that's associated with this, so I could have different types of vendor invoice journals popping through in the system. So now if I go over here, again, if I return back on my mouse, if I return to my payables area and then create an invoice journal, then again, it's doing exactly the same thing here where it's going out and saying, I've got a vendor invoice journal that I need to approve. I can go into the lines and say this is consulting. I can say this is for a vendor. This is the invoice number. And it's for $125. So just as before, I don't have this posting option here within the system. So, but when I go out and I submit this, then it's going to push it out to the workflows for approval. But now it's going to go out and assign this task to multiple people. So if I just refresh this and look at my invoice and look at the actions that are associated with it, then I can, because I'm the administrator, I can approve or reject this. But if I look at the history here, then we'll notice that it's been assigned to two users here, the administrator and also my CFO. And we can see that two work items have been created. So if I jump over here to my CFO and click on her notifications, then there's an invoice here that's been submitted. And if I open this up, then it takes me straight to the AP invoice. I can approve this. It looks fine. I'll close this down. Then if I return back to my main user that I had, then I've just received a notification that I need to approve this. But in the meantime, my CFO has gone out and approved this. She was the one here that approved it, so this work item has now disappeared, and the approval is being completed. And now if I return back to my payables invoice, then I can now post this and transfer it. But since I'm the administrator and I was assigned to this, even though I was assigned the task, it's now dropped off my task item list, and because it's no longer a valid task and I can post it. So this is another sort of next level up from just performing GL journals. You can go out and use all of these tasks for the posting and for the voucher. I think I didn't have a corresponding line offset line here, but you can just be assigned this and you can run through the task. Now, the invoice journals are fine, but there's also the vendor invoices here as well. that you can add workflows to. Now, for those, these are a little bit different and they're a little bit more advanced within the system. So I can go out and tell the system that I want to create a new workflow. And this time I'm going to create a vendor invoice workflow. Now, in this case, we've got a little bit more information popping up over here on the left-hand side. So before I've always had this approval step, but now I've got review information, and also I can go out and actually post the vendor invoice if I want to. I'm just going to pop this up and I'll show you how all of these work. So say for example I just put in an approval step here into the vendor invoice. And if I pop up my error pane, then I'm going to go out and assign this out to a number of users. And I'll assign it to administrator just to make it easy. And then I need some submission information, and this is a invoice approval. Put a D on that. And then I'll just put in some submission and sub. And I can just save this down, give it a new version, and pop it up. Now, we don't go out and for the AP invoices, we don't go out and attach them to any journals because they're more of a transaction. But there is something that you need to do. So if I look at all of the vendor invoices that I've got here, I've got a number of different ones that I've created over time. And there's one item here which is a default item. Now, this one is the one that I just created, and I want it to be used every time, in which case we want to set it as the default. I'll show how, for example, you can use these in different conditions, where, for example, if you had a vendor invoice for a certain vendor, then maybe you wanted to go through a different workflow process within the system. But I just want to tell the system every time I create this vendor invoice, then I want it to be processed this way. So now if I go back to here, if I go to my vendor invoices, if I create a new vendor invoice, and choose my account, and give it a date, and add a quick line here, and I'll perform some consultancy here, or some marketing services for $250. Now what's happened is when I've saved this, then the submission option pops up. And just like everything else, then I could go out and I can just submit this. And it's going to go out and it's going to send out the task for me. It's running in the background. In just a couple of seconds. Now I've got the approve or reject item here within my workflow. Let me just. Now this is fine, and I can just go out and approve this and complete it. But maybe you want to go out and add additional conditions around these invoices, because usually you don't want to have to review every invoice that's out there. Maybe you want to go out and review just certain invoices, or have sort of like a sanity check for any item that's above a certain amount. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the workflow, and I'm going to start to add in your business rules. Now, hopefully as we're going through this, everyone's sort of seeing that these workflows and how they look, it really isn't a lot of coding. It's really just dragging and dropping. But I've got some tasks over here, which is a review process. And I'm going to go out and just drag and drop, dump this over here onto my workflow. I'm going to hook that up so that after a review, then it goes to the next person for approval of the invoice. But what I want to do is I only want to perform this task a certain situation when, for example, an invoice is over $1,000 or $500 or whatever your policy is. You go over here to the left-hand side and you grab a conditional item. I'm just going to link this up, and I'm going to change the workflow and just change the flow just ever so slightly. Tidy and link it up. And now if I click on this and click on the basic settings area, then it's going to allow me to define a rule. So I'm going to say, is this greater than $1,000? And then to do this, you go out and add a condition. And all I'm doing here, I'll do this slowly, is if I click on this field or the thing that I'm looking at or that I'm trying to add a condition on, then it's going to show me the different tables that I can access. One of the vendor invoices. And I can go down here and I can go out and say, what is the invoice amount? So all of the fields that are on the invoice are available here. So I can use these conditions for different types of invoices, different statuses. I could have different, it routed for different vendors as well if I want to. And I'm going to say if the invoice amount is greater than 1,000, and one thing to remember is that you need to put in a currency code here. So this is greater than 1,000 US dollars. So I'll close this down, return back to my workflow, which is just over here. Now I've got a condition. If it's greater than $1,000, then I want the approval, the review step to be included here. And then if it's not, then I just want it to go straight to the review. And then I say who needs to review this. And again, I go up here to the basic settings, and this is a review. And then my instructions, large invoice posted. Please review this. Now, I also need to assign this to someone. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. And I'm going to, up until now, I've been using the user and saying that I want to go out and just assign this to people. But you can go out and you can associate approvals based on a hierarchy, which goes out and uses the organizational structure that you've defined to go out and find who the manager is of a person. Or I can go out and choose it by participant. And I could assign this to a security group as we set up before. Or what I can do is I can assign this based on security role. And I can assign this, for example, to the CFO. Now, the benefit of this is that I don't have to go out and specify people individually here, and if they have different role assignments, or if someone comes into the CFO position, or if there's rearrangement within the organization, I don't have to change any of these workflows. So you set it up once and use the org structure, and then everything's fine. So I've run that, and I'm just going to check that there's no errors, and there aren't. And now I can go out and I can save this. And I'm going to complete it, and I'm going to activate a new version. So I don't think up until now I've gone out and created multiple versions of the workflows, but now's a good time to sort of talk about that, because if I scroll over here, then you'll see that I have an active version here, and this is version 2.0, and you can see that I've got version 2.0 and version 1.0, and this is the active one. If I click on the versions button up here in the ribbon bar, then we can see the different workflows. And I could go out and deactivate any of the workflows. So if I made a mistake, or I don't want to run this, then I could just turn this off. Or I could return back to a prior version if I wanted to. But so if I come back here and go into create an invoice, and create this for a vendor, then choose an invoice date, then add a line item here, again for consulting. And this is $125 an hour, so it's going to bump up over the approval limit that I had here. If I submit this for approval, then it's going to run in the background. The workflow processor is going to then start assigning the task. If I just wait for 2 seconds. Now if I go out and look at my task, I can't do anything with this because the CFO has been assigned to this. If I view the history, it will show me that it's gone out and created a task over here for over $1,000 for a review. And it will show me that the CFO was assigned to this. So it's gone out and looked at my organizational structure, found out who is associated with the CFO role, and then assigned that. So if I close this down, if I quickly return to my CFO view here, and just review my task, see if I've been assigned that. Then now I've got a task here that a large invoice was posted. If I go to that as a CFO, I can see that item. Now, I'm going to make one small change here because she doesn't like the format of this invoice. So, for example, if I go to my attachments, then there's no invoice document that's stored here. There's nothing to give me further information as to why this should be $1,250. So I could either reject this, which would cancel the workflow, but instead I'm going to delegate this, and I'm going to assign it down to another user and say scan in documents. So now I'm using the workflow to delegate out to other users in the system. If I swap over to Gimli's task over here, I think this is his work item list. You can now see that he's been assigned as part of this process to track this invoice. And he can go out and he can complete this or delegate that as well if he wants to. Or he can go out and add a invoice here. We'll choose a file, choose one of the invoices. Let's see if we can look at this file. So now we've got our scanned invoice that we have here within the system. I can close this down, say this is completed, say done. And publish it. So again, moving back to my other hat that I have here, then the CFO is here. In a second, workflow would have been, I think actually Gimli went out and approved that because he was delegated. So now if I return back here to my invoice, then I've now been assigned the task because it went through that approval step, and now it's going through the traditional workflow. I can approve this, and then I can go out and post this within the system. If I look at the history again, we can see that the invoice task was created, but it was delegated by the CFO with the comment to scan in the document. He went out and did that. He added in his messages, so we've got all of this complete history. The step was completed, the task was completed, it was sent out and assigned to me. And then after a couple of seconds of that running, then the workflow actually completed, so that then my invoice is ready for running. Now I'll show one last thing before we, for this presentation. That is, we don't want to go out and always have to post these like we were doing with the general ledger. So you can get even more clever with your workflows, especially here with the document style workflows, because there's a posting option. So I can start extending out my workflows. I'm going to add in a step here, which is just a post, link this in, and then link this down to the end. Check that I've got no errors. Oops. And what this is going to do is this is going to go through every time an invoice gets created. Then if it's above $1,000, then it goes to the CFO for review, and she can do whatever she wants with it and delegate down and re-upload information or reject it and cancel it. After that, then it goes to the payables department for review. All they have to do is look at that and then just click on the approve. It will go down here to this post option and then post the invoice automatically, and then it will go over. It'll be available for payment through the payables area, so it actually gets rid of a step within the system. So as we move through, as we create more of these, then it's really just a matter of dragging and dropping and creating these approval steps. Now, I'm coming up on the top of the hour, so I want to open up the line to questions if anyone has anything about what I've shown. But the other areas that I didn't get to were around case management. So for example, I could go out and have workflows associated. If I go down to here, if there's a customer issue, then you can go out and create workflows that allow you to assign cases for review and have all of the incidents and customer complaints or collections issues or any case that you create in the system can be managed here through workflow. Now also what you can do is you can use workflow for document management. And the document management is interesting because if, for example, I go back to my home page, then I've gone out and scanned in all of my invoices as they're being processed. And I haven't created an invoice for them at this point. But I could go out and look at these and look at the document, and this could be an invoice that needs to be processed. And there's a workflow that's associated with this, and I could tell the system that I want this to be a AP invoice, which is going to then tell it that I want to submit it for vendor invoice document management. So this changed just based on the content type. And then when I submit this, then the document will disappear from my list of invoices that I have here and then start showing up as documents that need to be processed. So this would be a scanned-in invoice that then goes to the payables department, and then they could go out and enter in the invoice associated with it, and have it routed whichever way you want. And then attach this document to the vendor invoice that we were creating before and have workflows associated with them as well. So all of the workflow processing that we have here, so I can record this, I can approve it, I can change it based on my user, is again another way that you can track and control all of your work items, and also the financial processes and all of these workflows that you have in the system directly through Dynamics AX. So I've talked for the past 40 or 50 minutes, and I've shown you a lot of things, and the key area that I want to sort of highlight here is that workflow is a little bit different from what you're doing right now with maybe manual processes. But it's not something that is necessarily very hard to configure. You just have to sit down and sort of design your workflows and create the flows and create the business process. So I'm going to really open up the floor to questions if any have come through that Jason can ask me, or if he opens up the lines and people ask the question.
All right, thanks, Murray. Yeah, we can take questions through the Q&A block. And Murray, why don't you, or maybe you can keep your screen up in case you want to share any other sort of demo materials. But if you hover in the top of the screen, you should see a chat or a Q&A, and you can. Oh, here we go. So you'll see it on the right now.
Pop open, yeah.
We'd love to hear from you. What's your experience implementing workflow? Has it been a challenge in your organization? What are some of the reasons why you have done it? We'd love to hear from that now. Murray, I'm curious, just to get things started, do you have a rough guess of what percentage of AX users you work with have actually taken a shot at implementing workflows like these?
The workflow is something that I think people are scared of, and everyone wants to implement business processes and want to have these in place, but they don't go to the IT department in order to sort of say we'd like to get these, or they go to the IT department and say we'd like to get these done, when in fact it's more of their task that they can go out and build these themselves. So there's unfortunately not a lot of people go out and implement workflows because they think it's daunting and they think it's a hard task to perform. And what I'm trying to sort of show is it's not super complicated. It's just something that's different within the system. And that's a long-winded way of saying that only a small percentage of our customers go out and create the workflows, even though they're reasonably simple to configure. And that's the experience that I've had with all of our customers.
All right, so still a lot of opportunity to take advantage of it. We have a couple of questions that have come in here. Let me start grabbing some of those. Can a workflow be set up specific to a site in the company to be different from another site?
Yeah, and something that I didn't show as I went through the workflow is that there's a conditional option. So when I go out and generate my workflow, I could say I only want to fire this version of the workflow in certain situations. And that's where you can go out and say, for this site, then I want to use this workflow. For this site, I want to use this workflow. Or you could go even down to a lower level and say, for this site and for this vendor, I want to run a specific workflow and run a more generic one for everyone else. So there's a lot of different controls, and you're not limited to having the same workflow running throughout the organization.
All right. One person asks, how does workflow affect system performance in AX?
The system performance shouldn't change. It shouldn't really be impacted by the workflow. There's a process that's running in the background which is really coordinating all of these tasks. And then as we go out and kick off a workflow, then if it pops that up, then it's going to run through the tasks that you've defined in the workflow, just as if someone did it themselves. So what you're doing is you're really streamlining some of the processes and running them in the background rather than doing them in the foreground through the keyboard. So don't worry about running workflows and whether it will cripple the system. It's just running through and waiting for a task to pop in, and then it's processing it and moving it to the next step. It's very, very, very lightweight.
All right. When using the vendor approval journal workflow, how do you incorporate the value into the process? There doesn't appear to be an available option within the journal ledger table that the workflow is linked to.
So you should be able to go out and drill into the line details themselves with the workflow. Something that I noticed as I was going through and creating the data that I had for this presentation is that if you go and look at the fields that are popping up, or the valid fields for when I'm creating my condition, then you'll find that there's also a set of tables which are linked at the bottom of the field list, which go down to subtables. And you should be able to find the ledger values down there for the journal entries. So some areas, depending on how you want to activate these, and they're going to sort of be a little bit further down in that field tree, but I'm sure that you'd be able to find the ones for the journals. But without sort of looking at it myself, I'm making an assumption here.
All right. Rick asks, what would it take to add a step that changes the vendor invoice in some way, for example, adjusting the account distribution?
There's all of the left-hand side of the forms that I was showing goes out and has all of the tasks and all of the things that you can perform. A lot of the tasks are reasonably generic. For example, it may be an approval step, or it may be a check or a review task. Now, if, as an example though, in the last example that I showed, there was a task which was to post the vendor invoice, which went out and ran business logic in the back end. If you want to go out and perform some sort of logic through the workflow, then you need to get a little bit dirty with that and do a little bit of development, because you can go out and you can create your own workflow task steps that go out and run logic, and you'd go out and create the logic yourself, and then it would show up in that left-hand side. So for things like adjusting the account distribution or performing checks or holding transactions, then you can do that, but you need to go out and create a custom activity or task that you can then put into the workflow.
All right, let's see. So you may have touched on this one. Can workflows trigger changes to specific data fields, for example, and update inventory quantity? And if I understood your last answer, basically yes. Yes,
you can. So, but for these more clever sort of transactions, then you need to do a little bit of coding. I have written up a document that shows you how you can go out and create your own custom workflows, and also how you can go out and create your own custom tasks as well. If anyone's interested, then just drop me a note, or I think you can find that one as a blueprint on Amazon.
Okay, maybe we can include a link to that in the follow-up where we give people access to the recording of the session, which we are recording today, so you can look for that soon. One more question that I see in the queue here. Is there a way for non-AX users to approve invoices through workflows?
Now, you can't have non-AX users approving workflows or being involved in the steps, but they don't have to be enterprise users in the steps. So, for example, you can have just lower license users that are performing updates, and that's just a licensing requirement that Microsoft have to control the people that are sort of being managed within the system. So it's not really the best answer, because you can't have sort of like phantom users just approving tasks from the outside world. Now, with that said, though, if you have tasks where if you use the workflows around the vendor onboarding and vendor management and approval, then there are tasks that the vendors can perform and they're free users in the system. So there's a couple of different options that you can use. And I think Sarah also asked the other question, you can use the portal. You can use the employee self-service portal, which will give you the list of work items that you've been assigned, and also you can go out and use any of the role centers outside of Dynamics AX to access tasks that you've been assigned from a workflow standpoint. But again, you're still a user in the system.
All right. Well, let's start wrapping up here. I know we're beyond the top of the hour, and I think we're through the question queue as well. So let me start by just saying thanks to you, Murray, for presenting today.
Oh, you're welcome. This is I'm just trying to spread the word and make sure everyone knows that workflow isn't hard.
Great, and there we can see all of the various ways you can get in touch with Murray if you have further questions or observations. He's available on many different channels here. Thanks to everyone else in the audience for attending today. We really appreciate the questions, for the attention. It was a great turnout, and we hope to do it again soon. So please be on the lookout for more financial automation webcasts coming up soon from us. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.